Somewhere right now, a 26-year-old named Priya is refreshing her stock app. She works in marketing. Decent job, decent salary. She's watched the news for the last 2 years, and she's heard it 100 times. AI is changing everything. AI is the biggest wealth event of her lifetime. And somewhere deep down, she believes it. So she does what most people do. She buys a little bit of an AI-themed fund, a few $100s, enough to feel like she's in on it. 3 towns over, a guy named Dev does something completely different. He doesn't buy a single stock. He builds a small tool using AI that automates part of his freelance design work. It saves him 12 hours a week. He starts selling access to that tool to other freelancers. 2 years later, Priya's investment is up a little, maybe 8%. She feels fine about it. Dev's tiny side project is now paying him more every month than his old job did. Same technology, same 2 years, 2 completely different outcomes. And this is the uncomfortable part nobody wants to say out loud. The AI boom is not making people rich because they believed in AI. It's making a specific group of people rich because of where they were standing when the wave hit. Everyone else isn't necessarily losing money, but they are, in a very real and measurable way, becoming relatively poorer. And once you understand the math behind why, you'll never look at a hot trend the same way again. Let's slow this down. For most of history, when a new technology showed up, wealth from it spread out fairly evenly and fairly slowly. The printing press needed thousands of workers. The railroad needed laborers, engineers, land, and decades to build. Even the early internet needed millions of jobs to run it. Warehouses, call centers, delivery drivers. Wealth trickled down because the technology needed human hands to function. AI breaks that pattern. That's the part most people miss. AI doesn't need millions of hands. It needs a small number of extremely well-positioned hands, and then it needs almost nobody else. Here's a simple way to picture it. Imagine a machine that can do the work of 100 people. If a company needs that output, it used to hire 100 people to produce it. Now it needs 1 person who knows how to operate the machine, and the other 99 are simply not needed anymore. That's not a metaphor. That's happening in customer support centers, content teams, junior coding roles, and basic design work right now, all over the world. So here's the first mental shift you need to make. The AI boom isn't really a story about a hot new technology. It's a story about leverage. And leverage is the single most important word in this entire video. So let's break it down in the simplest way possible. Leverage means being able to produce a massive result from a small amount of effort or capital. A normal worker trades hours for dollars. 1 hour in, 1 hour of pay out. That's a straight line, no leverage. An investor who buys shares in an AI company isn't trading hours. They're trading money for ownership. If the company grows, their ownership grows in value without them lifting a finger. That's leverage through capital. A builder, like Dev, creates a tool once and then sells it to 1,000 different people without redoing the work each time. That's leverage through systems. Notice something important here. All 3 people, Priya, Dev, and even the regular employee whose job got replaced by the machine, are looking at the exact same technology, but only 2 of them are using a form of leverage. The third one is standing directly in the technology's path, with no leverage at all, hoping to be spared. This is the part where most explainer videos would just tell you to invest early and move on, but that misses the real psychology of what's happening, and the psychology is where the actual answer is hiding. Humans are wired to imitate. If we see other people doing something and getting rewarded for it, we copy the visible behavior, not the invisible reasoning behind it. When people see AI stocks going up, they copy the buying. They don't ask why those specific companies are the ones capturing the value, or what position those early investors were in before the boom even started. This is called outcome bias. We look at someone's result and assume the result explains the decision, but often the real explanation is boring and structural. The early investor didn't get rich because they were smarter than everyone else watching the news. They got rich because they already had capital sitting around. They already understood how ownership works, and they were paying attention to the technology 2 or 3 years before it became a headline. By the time something becomes a mainstream conversation, most of the leverage has already been claimed. This is one of the strangest and most consistent patterns in financial history. The general public tends to arrive at a trend right as the easy gains are ending, not when they're beginning. Not because the public is careless, but because attention naturally follows outcomes, and outcomes always lag behind the real opportunity. So if Priya is buying the same AI fund she saw trending on social media, she isn't early, she's late to the leverage, even if she's early to the headline. Now here's where the math actually gets uncomfortable, so stay with this part. Let's say the total new wealth created by AI over the next several years is hypothetically $10 trillion. That number doesn't get divided evenly among everyone who uses AI, everyone who talks about AI, or even everyone who invests a little bit into AI. It gets captured almost entirely by whoever owns the infrastructure, the platforms, and the tools that other people depend on. A small number of company founders, early shareholders, and highly skilled builders will capture a disproportionate share of that value. Meanwhile, the millions of people whose daily tasks get replaced or shrunk by that same technology don't just fail to gain from the 10 trillion. Many of them lose the income they were relying on in the first place. That's the second mental shift. It isn't only a story about some people winning, it's a story about wealth becoming more concentrated on one side while stability quietly erodes on the other. When economists say the gap is widening, this is literally the mechanism. Not because bad decisions are being made by everyday people, but because the structure of the technology itself rewards ownership and leverage far more than it rewards effort and attention. Which brings us to the real psychological trap in all of this, and it's one almost nobody talks about. Most people think their two options are invest in the trend or ignore the trend, but there's a third option hiding in plain sight, and it's the one that actually determines whether someone benefits from a technological shift like this. That option is positioning. Positioning means asking a completely different question than everyone else is asking. Instead of asking what stock should I buy, you ask what skill, tool, or role becomes more valuable because this technology exists. Dev didn't ask how to profit from AI stock prices. He asked what problem AI could solve for people who were already paying him for his time. That single mental shift is the difference between chasing a trend and standing inside it. This is also why panic and imitation are so dangerous with something like this. When people feel the fear of missing out, they tend to copy the most visible action, which is usually buying something. But the people who actually benefit the most from technological shifts are rarely the ones buying the loudest trend. They're the ones quietly restructuring how they work, what they offer, or what they own, months or years before anyone else notices there's even a wave forming. So what does this actually mean for someone watching this video right now who isn't a founder, doesn't have a huge amount of capital, and isn't a software engineer? It means the goal isn't to chase the AI boom. The goal is to stop asking, how do I get a piece of this, and start asking, where can I create leverage with what I already have? That could be learning to use AI tools to produce more output in your current job, making yourself the person who operates the machine instead of the person the machine replaces. It could be turning a skill you already have into something repeatable, a course, a tool, a system, instead of only trading your direct hours for money. It could simply mean understanding that owning even a small piece of productive assets, invested with patience and consistency, behaves completely differently over time than simply working harder inside a system you don't own any part of. None of this requires perfect timing. It requires a shift in the question you're asking. Here's the part worth sitting with. Technology has never been the thing that creates wealth gaps. Technology only reveals who was already positioned to capture value and who wasn't. The printing press didn't create inequality. Ownership of printing presses did. The internet didn't create inequality. Ownership of platforms did. AI won't be any different. It's simply the newest mirror reflecting the same old rule back at us, just faster and with far higher stakes than before. So the next time you see a headline about AI making someone unbelievably wealthy, the real question isn't, should I buy what they bought? The real question is, what position were they standing in before anyone else was watching, and what position am I standing in right now? Because the boom isn't choosing winners and losers randomly, it's simply making the invisible structure of ownership and leverage impossible to ignore any longer. And once you see that structure clearly, you can never really unsee it again.